support to the people fighting and the people surviving who ultimately perished. His son was killed in a raid, in an air raid, I believe, a year before, and he continued to go on until he himself was killed. His writings, apparently he hid them, like in a bottle, that kind of thing, and they were found later and resurrected. And he wrote a lot of incredible things. He has another book, Derech HaMelech, which has a remarkable teaching on meditation. That if I gave it to you in English, you'd think it was the Dalai Lama, about silencing yourself and reaching that kind of internal silence. Brilliant stuff. But here he's in a different mode. This is the year before he's killed, and he's crying out about what's going on. And on Eikev, and he says, and he goes on, the suffering that we're having, you look at the churban, the destruction, the spiritual, the physical. I assume that people looking in the Warsaw Ghetto were not sure. It's kind of, forget about the Judaism. There's a great recording of Mahler's Night Symphony, and I read a review of it a couple of years ago. I went out and bought it immediately. Apparently, it was the last recording that Bruno Walter did before he fled across the border. And many of the musicians either fled or shortly after were transported to their death. And Mahler himself, as a Jew, was under attack. So the way the New York Times put it was, the amazing thing about this recording is that you hear Mahler, and you can feel it in the way that when you hear it, played by people who were never sure that this music would ever be heard again.
Yeah.
So this is how he's perceiving the world, right? I can imagine that if you're in the Warsaw Ghetto and you're seeing people shot and killed and carted off and dying in the streets, this big, beautiful world that they had before. We had apparently thousands and thousands of Talmudim before the war. It was one of the largest. He was apparently recognized as a beautiful educator. He wrote books on pedagogy and such things. We don't have people like that today. So he writes, you're looking around the world and you see this destruction, and you see all the deaths, all the great Rosh Yeshiva, all the people, the regular people. Nobody can concentrate. Nobody can live. It's impossible to eat, to do anything. So what does he say? Vaya Eikev tishmunat mishpatim ha'elu. When you see these, so mishpatim means it has the same kind of double meaning as the word sentence does in English.
Yeah.
Right? So mishpat is sentence in Hebrew. It's also a decree. So when you see these mishpatim, these decrees, that the whole world, that all the Torah is being stomped on like a jackboot. So vaya Eikev tishmun, when you hear the that was the Nazi walk, right? So when you hear the jackboot, he says, and you understand that, and you grieve over it, and you're sensitive to it, not blaming the other people for causing it, but rather you understand what that means, with the suffering and death of these children. I read every time. I always dread, the New York Times book review always has Holocaust books in there, and I'm always afraid of what I'm going to read. I spent a whole year being sick about reading about, they describe a German soldier walking around with a baby on his bayonet. So this week, I was just reading, some woman, that apparently women were killers during the war. And so this woman, 25-year-old woman with her own kids, right? These kids jumped off a train, so they escaped death sentence, right? These little kids, apparently. They managed to escape off the train. So she was nice to them. She took them into their house. She washed them. She fed them. Then she took them outside and shot them one by one in the forest. So when you see that, when you contemplate that, and you think about it, what it really means, that's when you bring about this shmartem. When you think about it and you store it in your heart, that's when you transform the world. That's when all these blessings come.
And what does shmartem mean?
Shmar also has double meaning. So the shmar means to observe, like to do something. It means to guard or to preserve. Like preserves, like when you put fruit in when you pickle them.
Yeah.
It's called shmarim.
Yeah.
You know, it's when you if you get this into your heart and you sympathize with it,
Yeah.
you understand the reality of human suffering and human tragedy and the human experience. That's when you transform it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I thought that was a good, not a good segue into talking about something happy. We don't want to like wallow in moroseness. Or nobody will watch.
Our ratings will go down and our show will get canceled.
So can we talk? Let's talk a little bit about. We have time to talk a little bit about Tu B'Av.
Yes.
Happy times.
Yes.
This chair is not infected with anything, right? I'm sorry to itch.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Maybe it's just what I'm talking about. It's an unbelievable sefer. If you ever get your Hebrew good enough to learn it, there's brilliant insights on the parsha, plus a remarkable bit of humanity that
Which
is missing.
What
from
book?
The Eish Kodesh.
The Eish Kodesh, okay. And then what book do you have here?
Oh, this is just the Gemara.
Legends of the Talmud.
This is the Ein Yaakov. So it's somebody, I don't even know who did this, a long, long time ago. Look how old this is. I made this for my 8th grade graduating class. I made because I was doing calligraphy then, so I made this sticker that everybody got in their thing when I was in 8th grade.
Okay.
It was so cute. So the Mishnah says that Tu B'Av, it's the strangest line in the whole world. Do you know this Mishnah? It says there were no happy days for the Jewish people like the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur.
I'm not sure. So keep going.
Wow, so this is gonna go a little bit against your conceptions of some of the ultra nasty approaches to Judaism that you've sometimes like to cite. So, what were the happiest days for the Jews? The 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. And what happened on Yom Kippur, the day that we all fast and sit around and
Absolved of their
flagellate
sins.
ourselves? So what happened in the temple times, in the good old days, in the times of the Mishnah, on Yom Kippur in the afternoon? You know? So Benot Yisrael Yotzot B'Kli Lavan Shulim, all the girls would buy white dresses and trade them. The girls would buy each other essentially white dresses, so that nobody would be left out. You couldn't gauge somebody's wealth by what they were wearing.
Yeah.
They would trade off something borrowed, as the line goes. And Ubenot Yerushalayim Yotzot B'Mecholot B'Kamim. And they would. This is a Mishnah that we're talking about. This is not some reconstructionist thing. And the girls would go out dancing in the vineyards
On Yom Kippur?
on Yom Kippur. Mahem Omrot. Look, I'm not making this up.
Okay.
Mahem Omrot. And what would they sing? Bachur Sana Inecha Orei Ma Toboher Lecha. Boys, lift up your eyes and see. Who are you going to choose?
Those were better days.
Yeah, and then there was a whole thing. They would say, look not only at beauty, but also look at the family, all kinds of stuff like that. And that was the great joy that happened on the 15th of Av and on Yom Kippur. So then the Gemara asks an interesting question. So the Gemara says, so you'd say, on Yom Kippur? The Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says, Bishlama Yom Kippur. We can understand Yom Kippur. Why? Because Yom Kippur in the afternoon, everybody's forgiven.
Right.
We're in a state of purity, so that makes sense, right? That's when the luchot were given, etc. But what's Tu B'Av? What happened on Tu B'Av? So, when you get a list of answers this long, it means they don't really know.
Right.
That's but there's a couple of interesting things. One answer is given that some of the things that happened through history. It was the day that the Shvatim were allowed to marry one another in the early days.
Shvatim meaning
the tribes.
different tribes.
The tribes.